Hi everyone. This presentation essentially marks our first official tool workshop. To remind you, our charge for this course to complete by the end of the semester is you were recently appointed administrator of a public health organization, and your governing body charges you to assess the capacity and improve the performance of the organization in order to achieve full accreditation within 3 years. You have 100 days or 1 semester to produce a credible plan to achieve this goal. We will meet the demands of the charge by creating a set of 14 tools. You've already completed a transition agenda. For this module, the task is to design a public health logic model and infrastructure map or scorecard. To develop the tools for this module, we first must articulate an answer to the question, what is public health? Let's start with its essential underlying philosophy of social justice, as well as other important features listed in this table. Public health promotes physical and mental health and prevents disease, injury, and disability, specifically by preventing epidemics and the spread of disease, through protecting against environmental hazards, through preventing injuries, intentional and unintentional, through promoting and encouraging healthy behaviors, through responding to disasters and assisting communities in recovery, as we have seen often and unfortunately over this past summer and fall with all of the hurricanes, the devastating hurricanes, and assuring the quality and accessibility of health services. These tables present some other images and definitions of public health. Take a minute to read through them, please. These selected images and definitions provide a framework for major eras of public health history in the United States, such as before 1850. We sometimes think of that as battling epidemics. Then between 1850 and 1949, we were focused on building state and local infrastructure, as you've read for this module. And then in 1950 through 1999, we were focused on filling in gaps in medical care delivery. And since 1999, we've been focused on preparing for and responding to community health threats. How do you define public health? How do you define the eras of public health? Considering the relevance of the historical course of public health, what aspects of public health practice have changed over the past 200 years? Which aspects haven't changed? What evidence do you have for concluding this? Either way, what does this say about the functions of public health? Are they enduring or evolving? With that, let's move into our first tool workshop, a public health logic model. A logic model is a map or a simple illustration of what you and your organization do, why you do it, what you hope to achieve, and how you will measure achievement. Logic models illustrate how a project, program, or policy is understood or intended to produce particular results. Many of you highlighted the importance of evaluation on your professional transition agenda. A logic model is a useful method to help provide robust evaluation results. So as Lemuel Shattuck's report of the Sanitary Commission of Massachusetts in 1850 outlined existing and future public health needs for Massachusetts, and also became America's roadmap for development of a public health system, please likewise think about this logic model tool as a roadmap that best reflects public health in 21st century America. In order to be most effective, it's important to consider the history of public health and where we've come from. Be sure to review the Delta Omega Classics linked on the eClassroom site. They're both informative and super interesting. Also, watch some of the videos addressing what is public health. Now let's place this historical context into a present systems framework, such as the social ecological perspective of health. Here, we focus on determinants of health, such as biologic, behavioral, social, cultural, environmental, and most importantly, we consider their interrelationships. Here, we're also going to consider the core functions and public health services frameworks. And we'll likewise consider a public health system performance model framework, similar to a logic model for the entire system. Now let's look at a conceptual framework for measuring public health system performance. How do we measure the effectiveness of our public health system, of its structural capacity, its processes, and of course, of its outcomes? A starting place is to consider a framework we just mentioned, the public health core functions of assessing, developing policy, and of assurance. Guided by these public health core functions enables public health programs and services to be consistent with mandates and community priorities. Let's now put this all together and dig into developing the tool. Systems thinking and logic models can contribute to public health systems practice and management. Be sure to consider the different definitions of public health that we've encountered so far in this course as a backdrop for identifying or synthesizing a logic model that best reflects public health in 21st century America. Describe public health as a system using a logic model with inputs, processes, outputs, and results, emphasizing the role of core functions that we just mentioned and essential public health services. Use the next few slides as a reference for developing your logic model. And with this, our logic model tool workshop concludes, but we will now go into our second tool of the module. We will now go directly into our second tool workshop. Let's start with this map so we can envision the system that public health efforts serve. As are run many systems in the U.S., the public health system is run at multiple levels, federally, at the state level, at the county level, as well as at the municipal level. It's important to remember that relative roles of and expectations for national, state, and local government shift over time, and then public health roles parallel these larger shifts. Changes over time in science, such as nature and perceived importance of health threats, and social values, as in the role and size of government, and health as a right versus health as a privilege, help explain the shifting governmental roles in the United States. Despite the lack of federal authority for health, as Thomas Jefferson once said, many are the exercises of power reserved to the states wherein a uniformity of proceeding would be advantageous to all, such as quarantines and health laws. This table represents our population health system. federal public health activity spending as a percent of total health spending comes in at less than 2%. Now let's turn to our specific tool, a public health infrastructure map. In your teams, develop a public health infrastructure map or scorecard or sociogram or some other type of graphic characterization that illustrates key aspects such as roles, relationships, relative importance, or impact of the major players, contributors, participants, stakeholders in the public health infrastructure. Your map can take any graphic format that you choose, including one or more of the examples identified in the narrative presentation, but you're free to devise your own in any form or fashion. Expenditures, roles, duties, influence, impact could be the backdrop for developing a scorecard of the actors in the public health system. Here are some other resources that you can review to select your graphic from. Considering where federal health dollars are allocated, as in among the various public health agencies of our federal government, acts as a lens to examine whether federal public health spending is in line with our understanding of federal public health roles. Or, considering similar allocations of health dollars at the state and local level facilitates a better understanding of who does what, where public health resources go, and how this helps us understand how public health systems work. Carefully review the following slides with your group and select the graphic characterization format that your group will develop into your tool. This slide describes how to create a rectangular pie chart or scorecard approach. Here's a little time to review this aspect. Look at this epidemic scorecard. You're welcome to create something of this variety. Or maybe you would prefer another graphic. Be sure to carefully review the following graphic examples with your group to help you select a graphic representation for this tool. A health impact pyramid, a flow diagram as this one, here's another example of a graphic you're welcome to use. Conducting a social network analysis might be interesting. I look forward to learning which tool each group decides to use to represent their graphic representation of the public health system. No matter what tool you use, don't forget that both tools are due to the discussion board on Friday, February 2nd, and then this public health infrastructure tool is due to your individual assignment item on February 5th, Monday. Thank you very much.